Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm coming back again for my second lecture. Last time I did the introduction to maritime. I touched so many areas like opportunities at sea, and I went on to discuss businesses. Not all were mentioned. If one is interested to know more, you get to my website and find the details there. As I have already mentioned, my website is www.memec.org. For jobs, remember, I said everybody is welcome. No qualification doesn't fit at sea. Everybody has something to do as long as you have a skill. Not necessarily professional skills. You can be a painter, you can be a welder, you can be everything. Also, you can be yourself and be a stevedore and use your energy to work at sea. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm about world shipping routes. These vessels have their shipping lanes. They have their routes to move the cargo to and fro any country in the world. So I'm going to follow up those routes so that I prepare you to other chapters where we need to deliberate on other things and other government departments that are part of what is happening at sea. The UNCLOS is the Convention on the Law of the Sea, is emphasizing the fact that all member states should give the international fleet the right of passage in their territorial waters. So, important shipping routes are as follows. There are three categories of important shipping routes: the transatlantic, the trans-Pacific, and Europe to Far East. Those are the three categories. But we can go on and expatiate on those one by one. We have a route through the Strait of Malacca. That route is heading towards countries like China and Japan. It runs between Indonesia and Malaysia and is a gateway for trade to and fro Asia. So that route is called the Strait of Malacca. Secondly, we have the North Atlantic route. That route is heading towards Europe, towards countries like Netherlands, France, and heading to cities like Rotterdam, Amsterdam, London, Lisbon, Oslo, and other important ports in the world, especially Western Europe. That route might go from Asia, Far East Asia, or from countries like Japan, China, through the Strait of Malacca, across the Indian Ocean, Gulf of Aden, entering the Suez Canal, passing through the Mediterranean Sea, and head on towards the English Channel and North Sea to these ports I have mentioned. That is the port of Rotterdam, Amsterdam, London, Oslo, Lisbon, and other ports in the Scandinavian countries. That route is called North Atlantic. At the same time, some ships can head towards the west, towards North America, where they can reach ports like New York, Boston, and others, like Montreal, for instance, in Canada. So that is the North Atlantic route. It takes that direction. A third route is the Cape of Good Hope. This is our own. As I have already mentioned, South Africa is surrounded by oceans, the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean. This route is heading to the east or the west, far east or far west. It goes via Cape Town, the Cape Point. It services the ports along the Indian Ocean, along the Atlantic Ocean on the west, and it might go up to join the North Atlantic, the English Channel, the North Sea, or join the Panama Canal. That is called the Cape Route. This route also serves the African countries as it goes along the coast of the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. It also heads towards India, Mumbai, and across the Strait of Malacca again, towards China, and end up in Tokyo and other countries like Hong Kong and other ports like Dalian, Shanghai, and all others. That is the Cape Route. I'm going to expatiate about the Cape Route later on and mention particularly or emphasize its strategic importance. The Mediterranean Suez Asiatic route. That route means vessels will travel and pass the Suez Canal. It links Europe, Far East, and Middle East via the Gulf of Aden. Everybody knows about the Gulf of Aden. And then it heads on towards the Mediterranean Sea. Sometimes it will come from Europe, and these vessels head towards Asia through the Mediterranean Sea. So they will be going to Mumbai, Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Dalian, Tokyo as well, using the Suez Canal route. It also connects the North Atlantic English Channel and the North Sea if the vessels are coming from the Far East or Middle East via the Mediterranean Sea. So they can take the route towards Western Europe, capturing England and other Western Europe countries. Or this route can just turn towards the Panama Canal, connecting the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific in the west. So they are forced to pass across the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal has been newly refurbished so that it captures new vessels or new builds, so that those big ones, like the mega ships, depending on the size and the draft, are able to pass through the Suez Canal. It links the Pacific Ocean in West America. This route is always used to avoid the Cape of Good Hope, our own. I will tell you the reason why later on. Sometimes the Cape of Good Hope is not the first choice to the international fleet for reasons that will be mentioned later. The Panama Canal is a gateway to the Pacific Ocean and connects the east and the west via the Pacific Ocean and also the Atlantic. As I have already mentioned, that from Atlantic you pass the Panama Canal, then you join the Pacific Ocean, and then you might end up connecting the Southeast Asian countries using that particular route. Now, having talked about all these routes which I define as the most important world shipping routes, I need to position South Africa in that context. Where is our country? Of what importance is the Cape of Good Hope route, which was called the Cape of storms in the olden days because of the kind of weather we have there. South Africa is at the tip of Africa. I mentioned that in my last lecture. It is strategically positioned as far as shipping lanes are concerned. It is an alternative when other routes are not working at all. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, I told you that we are surrounded by vast oceans. So these oceans are able to accommodate any kind of vessel as far as the draft is concerned. And also, it has no limitations. That is our advantage. No limitations at all, even to the mega ships that are built now. Remember, these mega ships go over the draft of 18 meters to maybe 24, 25. Those are the vessels that are on the pipeline now. They are going to reach that draft. So it means that it's putting the Suez Canal at a disadvantage because the Suez Canal might be narrow and shallow for these kinds of vessels to pass. And the Panama Canal, remember, it is becoming costly now that it is refurbished because the toll costs have risen up. So we remain as South Africans as an alternative to the international shipping. Now we know that the carriers choose the less costly routes. So the tendency is to avoid the Cape route because it is long and expensive, except for the reasons I have already mentioned, where the ships will come our own way. So the Cape route is also known to be very dangerous. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to elaborate on the disadvantages we have as well. It is also known to be very dangerous, or it has treacherous waves. Many a times, the wild coast is not persuasive to the vessels that are coming down, especially the oil tankers that are forced to take the Cape route because of their size. So when they get to the wild coast, especially in winter, they experience many problems. They run aground, they get stuck somewhere because of the strong winds. So we have those problems. But fortunately, the South African government has provided for that. It has contingency plans to take care of those accidents and incidents. We have our big vessel that was built in South Africa, the Smith Amandla. This vessel has been assisting South Africa for years, and because of its nature, it is built to suit those conditions. IMO usually says that those kinds of ships are goal-based. It was built to tow the vessel that are in distress. So that's why South Africa has been using this vessel for a long time. So the international community knows that South Africa has got these vessels. So there's no fears coming to South Africa, even if it's winter, knowing very well that the waves in South Africa are not persuasive. Because of the contingency plans of having that standby vessel, they are not scared to come and sail around the South African territorial waters. So big ships that are coming in these days, because the companies like MSC have tried to build bigger vessels. Now these bigger vessels, sometimes they won't fit at all. The Suez Canal won't accommodate them. The more they become big, the more the Suez Canal will become narrower, so they are unable to pass. Now the alternative is the Cape route. The Suez Canal, for instance, if I may by chance go further with it, has the draft of 18 meters and about 190 kilometers long. The vessels that pass through that canal are about 220,000 deadweight tons, fully loaded. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is very big. And the draft, at least, is deep. But it's 18. It doesn't go above 18. And then right now, I know that there are vessels that are being built that are above that go to 24, that are going to come out in 2018-19. So, ladies and gentlemen, it means that the Suez Canal cannot afford, unless it is widened, lengthened, and it do everything to make those kinds of vessels pass. So the alternative of those mega ships will be the Cape route, following the big oil tankers that are already doing so. So, also, whilst the Suez Canal doesn't have locks, there are delays there. There are queues. If you go to my manual in my website, you will be able to notice the queue in the Suez Canal. Look at those big vessels if they are queuing in a canal that is about 192 kilometers in length. So that is costly now as far as time is concerned. So I want to ensure you that the Cape route will still be an alternative in future, unless the shipping companies start increasing the size. So we're lucky. Now let me go down to the Panama Canal again. The Panama Canal, I want to just to expatiate a little bit so that you understand what I'm talking about. The Panama Canal is a 77-kilometer waterway. Really, I said it is connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific. It is newly refurbished. I was reading, and I also saw when I was in Panama, that they are adding more locks in it, which means that if they are adding those locks, passing it will be time consuming. And the toll cost also has risen up, so which is a disadvantage to them. But the draft still accommodate Panamax vessels and post-Panamax now. Now the post-Panamax is bigger than Panamax. Post-Panamax is something more than the Panamax itself. So it's catering for those vessels. Those vessels are going towards ports like Los Angeles, Long Beach, and also all other ports in West America. So they go around the Panama Canal. This means, ladies and gentlemen, as I have already mentioned, the Suez Canal and the Cape route will always be better than the Panama Canal as far as these big vessels are concerned. Let me mention that the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal always have other choke points. Choke points, I can simply refer to them as disadvantages somehow along the line. I will mention a few of them. There are delays, as I have already mentioned, in the Suez Canal because of the queues. One would say it is still congested even after refurbishments. It is still narrow after refurbishments, especially if there are new vessels which are bigger than the size they already accommodate. The Panama Canal has the locks, as I have already said. That is time consuming as well. There are also disruptions in these canals. Like sometimes you get closures. A closure could be for any other reason, including for political reasons, or for piracy, Remember the Gulf of Aden, where piracy exercises are very rife, to a level where the international community sent the naval forces to take care of the Gulf of Aden. So there are those disruptions that might occur, and to carriers, that is money. The ships are counting time. If they cannot pass as scheduled, there's a problem. There are also problems of demurrage. The more the ship is waiting in a port without being served, the cost becomes higher. So all these reasons I've just mentioned impair navigation. Navigation becomes difficult. It's better for the vessels. For that matter, it's becoming cheaper now to sail around the Cape because of those delays. Open oceans are better than narrow and shallow oceans. I have already said that the government of South Africa, understanding that we have the treacherous waves that are very disadvantageous to the international fleet, have provided a solution. The solution is a tug that is on standby. I mentioned last time that to be on standby doesn't mean this vessel is just sitting, standing, not doing anything. No, it's not. It's ready to move anytime it is called to, and also it is running at higher notes, and it is very powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, these shipping routes are well illustrated in my manual. I tried to find a diagram that shows the shipping routes, those that are most important for our international trade. So if you are interested to see the shipping routes, you will conduct or consult my manual and see what I'm talking about. This lecture is prepared to introduce so many things, because before you know about international trade by ships, because you know it has already mentioned that about 90% of international trade is done using the maritime transport. So the maritime transport has its own externalities. Like, for instance, you find that because of its movement, other government departments are involved at sea. Like, you need the subs. The subs must be there. You need environmental affairs. You need home affairs. You need health. You need the Navy, Defense Force. You need home affairs because of this kind of trade. So you'll find that, ladies and gentlemen, at sea there is an integrated approach because these vessels demand assistance and so many things. So I'll talk about the integrated approach in the management of the oceans later on in another lecture I will be providing. But for this one lecture, I am preparing you students for international trade, that is trade by ships, and importance of ports. What are ports for? What are they doing? The regulatory framework of oceans and seas. The integrated approach, as I have already told you, that there are many government departments that are doing some work at sea. Also, I'll touch safety, security, and marine environment, because these vessels, at the same time, they tend to be a nuisance. Sometimes the oil leaks. Sometimes there are collisions. Sometimes there are wrecks at sea. All these are disturbing the marine environment or the biodiversity or ecosystem, if you want to call it. That's how you get to see the Department of Transport working with environmental affairs and other government departments, including security state security is there at sea, so that we see that the terrorists don't enter our territorial waters. The piracy is not there to disturb the international trade. So I'm preparing you. That's why I'm talking about ships first. Now, there are externalities, external issues that are affecting international trade. And then I'll also introduce you to boat and ship building matters, because some of you want to be able to build a boat. So I must sit there and tell you how to build a boat. I must tell you how to build a ship, because I have an experience about those kind of things. So also my lectures will introduce you to salvage. How do we salvage the vessels in distress in our South African territorial waters? I will be lecturing on that, because fortunately I have managed that area. Lastly, my lectures will talk about the real opportunities as far as careers are concerned. Please, ladies and gentlemen, expect my third lecture soon. But don't forget to go back to www.memec.org to get the manual, because the lecture is a summary. The details are included in the manual in my website. You click and you get to it. So this is meant to assist young South Africans so that they come to the sea. It's a form of marketing the sea to the youth of South Africa. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.